900 pairs of hungry eyes, and my granddaughter, not even if hell froze over. In that instant, 97-year-old YAKUT huntress Ayla felt the 7 air cut like blades, but it was the fury igniting her veins that kept her alive. With her ancestral axe, she danced a deadly ballet beneath the aurora borealis, facing the overwhelming horde of albino tigers, each blow a prayer, each roar from the predators a promise of annihilation. The snow, once pristine, stained dark red under the ghostly light, as the elder fought like a legend, protecting the last link to her heart. Exhausted, victory finally seemed hers. Until a sound, a fragile wail, tore through the tundra's silence, colder than any wind, revealing that the true horror might only be beginning. Ayla's heart, already battered by battle, now beat with a disordered force, a war drum echoing in her chest. The wail, so fragile and familiar, came from her yurt, her home, the only refuge she had sworn to protect. The weariness that had prostrated her an instant before evaporated, replaced by a cold, cutting adrenaline. Her eyes, previously fixed on the vast expanse of snow and the motionless forms of the subdued tigers, a landscape of victory and exhaustion, now turned with desperation to the entrance of her dwelling. Every fiber of her being screamed, "My granddaughter!" She didn't run, she flew. Her knees, which moments before had felt like ice, found renewed strength. The axe, still heavy in her gloved hands, was now a forgotten burden, a useless extension of her fury. The snow beneath her moccasins, once firm, seemed to give way with each hurried step, as if the earth itself wanted to impede her desperate race. The icy wind whipped her weathered face, but Ayla felt no cold, only the panic consuming her, a flame more intense than any ember. The deep wrinkles on her forehead deepened, and her thin lips pressed into a hard line. Reaching the yurt's entrance, Ayla didn't hesitate. She pushed aside the heavy hide curtain with a violence that would make any young warrior recoil. The interior, warm and cozy, should have been a relief. But for Ayla, it was a scene of imminent terror. Her eyes swept the small space, searching for the source of the crying that still echoed, now louder, more agonizing, and then she saw her. Small, huddled beneath the reindeer hides that served as a blanket, her granddaughter was there, safe and sound. Her little arms were pressed against her chest, her tiny face wet with tears, sobs shaking her tiny body. But there were no injuries, no claw marks, not the slightest trace of physical danger. What there was, instead, was childish terror. The persistent fear of a nightmare that still held her in its icy embrace. Ayla stopped, the air caught in her lungs. The axe, which she didn't even remember dropping, fell with a dull, final thud onto the snow outside. Relief hit her like an avalanche, more powerful than the fury of battle, more overwhelming than the tundra's cold. Her legs gave way, and she fell to her knees on the bear hide, covering the floor, her trembling hands covering her face. Tears, warm and abundant, streamed down her wrinkles, freezing into tiny crystals as they met the icy air still seeping through the open door. The sound of her granddaughter's crying, once a torment, was now the sweetest of melodies. Ayla crawled to the small figure, her movements slow and clumsy, as if her body, finally free of tension, was falling apart. She wrapped her granddaughter in her arms, holding her tight against her chest, feeling the warmth of the small body, the accelerated rhythm of the tiny heart. "Shh, my little ice flower," she whispered, her voice hoarse with emotion. "Ayla is here. It's all right." Her granddaughter, feeling her grandmother's familiar embrace and the scent of smoke and snow, gradually calmed, her sobs diminishing until they became small sighs. Ayla kissed the damp forehead, her heart swollen with deep and painful gratitude. In that instant, As she rocked her granddaughter, the elder understood the deepest and bitterest truth of her existence as a guardian. She had faced and defeated a horde of mythical predators, a feat that defied logic and age itself. She had emerged victorious over visible danger, the tangible enemy. But the greatest fear, what had truly chilled her to the bone, was not the threat of the tigers, nor the merciless cold of Yakutia. It was the invisible, the uncontrollable, what lurked in the shadows of a child's dream. She closed her eyes, feeling the weight of the world dissipate with her granddaughter's last sob. The peace, so hard won on the tundra, now blossomed in her heart, a peace that didn't come from victory over an enemy, but from the certainty that her most precious love was safe. The greatest victory of a guardian, she realized, was the serenity of knowing that those we love are safe. Even if the threat had been merely an echo of a nightmare, an illusion that dissolved at the touch of an embrace. The outside world, with its real challenges and dangers, seemed distant now. The warmth of the yurt, the smell of hides, and her granddaughter's soft breathing were her universe, her triumph. She would remain there, rocking her, until the Yakutian sun dared to peek out again, bringing with it the promise of a new day. Ayla remained there, rocking her granddaughter, the warmth of the small body being the only comfort amidst the cold that still seemed to penetrate her soul. The hours dragged on, marked only by the child's soft breathing and the heavy silence that followed the storm of emotions. Outside, the Yakutian wind continued to whisper ancient secrets, but inside the yurt, peace, fragile and precious, had finally settled. Slowly, the pale light of dawn began to peek through the dwelling's cracks, tinting the hides with a soft gold and announcing the end of the longest night of Ayla's life. With the arrival of the sun, Ayla's granddaughter, Lena, awoke completely, her large, dark eyes blinking in the faint light. She looked at her grandmother, a small smile appearing on her lips, the nightmare of the previous night almost forgotten. Ayla returned the smile, which deepened her wrinkles but radiated unwavering love. With a sigh of weariness that seemed to come from her soul, Ayla rose, her bones protesting with every movement. There was a world out there to be faced, the consequences of her battle, the village that needed her wisdom. Holding Lena's small hand, Ayla pushed aside the hide curtain and stepped out onto the tundra. The cold morning air bit her skin, but her eyes were fixed on the landscape ahead. What she saw made her hold her breath again. The snow, once white and untouched, was now marked by a vast expanse of motionless forms. The bodies of the albino tigers scattered like ice statues beneath the rising sun. There was no fresh blood, only dark, frozen stains, silent witnesses to her fury. A different pain struck her, that of necessary violence. She had won, yes, but the emotional cost was immense. Her hand squeezed Lena's. Soon, the first villagers began to appear. The morning silence was broken by murmurs of awe and reverence. Men and women, young and old, emerged from their yurts, their faces pale with shock and disbelief. They saw Ayla standing, small and fragile, against the white vastness, yet emanating a strength that seemed to defy nature itself. They saw the tigers, an unthinkable number of predators, subdued by a single woman, an elder, their eyes filled with tears of relief and gratitude. Boris, one of the elders, approached slowly, his steps hesitant in the snow. He knelt before Ayla, a gesture of profound respect, and others followed, their heads bowed in acknowledgement. Ayla looked at them, her eyes moist. She didn't want praise, only peace. She raised her free hand, a gesture for them to rise. "Yakutia tests us," her hoarse voice echoed in the icy air, "but the strength of our people lies not only in our axes, but in the hearts that beat together." She squeezed her granddaughter's hand. "Life is a gift, and family the most valuable treasure. We protect each other no matter the threat, visible or that which hides invisible." Her ancestral wisdom, forged in almost a century of survival, was a balm for fearful souls. The villagers rose, their gazes fixed on Ayla, no longer just a huntress, but the living embodiment of their resilience. They approached, not with morbid curiosity about the tigers, but with the need to be near her, to feel the security she radiated. The women embraced Ayla, their gestures full of affection and respect. The children, still frightened, looked at the granddaughter, understanding in their own way the danger averted. Ayla felt the warmth of the community envelop her, a web of connection that was her true armor against the merciless world. The tundra, which had been a battlefield, now seemed an altar of gratitude and renewal. Life in Yakutia continued, always stronger and more united, under the watchful eye of its legendary guardian. The sun slowly climbed the pale sky. With it, Ayla's village awoke to a new reality. The morning air, though biting, carried a different weight, relief and awe. The women, with faces marked by cold and worry, moved with renewed purpose, preparing herbal tea and food that would warm bodies and spirits. The children, curious, peeked from behind the yurt hides, wide eyes fixed on the white forms scattered across the tundra, silent testimony to the impossible. Ayla, with Lena nestled in her arms, watched the scene with a serenity that barely concealed deep exhaustion. The night had not just been a battle, it was an indelible landmark, a living legend for generations. Boris, along with other men, organized the task of dealing with the tiger bodies. There was no joy in victory, only the grim necessity of utilizing what nature, in its cruelty and generosity, had offered. The hides, dense and white, would be an invaluable treasure, ensuring warmth and survival. The meat, though not their usual game, would sustain the village for weeks, a relief in times of scarcity. While the men worked in respectful silence, the women gathered around Ayla. Their touches were gentle, their gazes full of reverence, their words murmurs of gratitude and admiration. Kyle, a young mother, handed Ayla a steaming bowl of wildberry tea, her eyes moist. "You saved us, Ayla," she whispered, her voice choked. "You saved all of us and our children from the coldest darkness." Ayla merely nodded, her eyes fixed on the landscape that was transforming from a battlefield into an unexpected source of sustenance. She felt the comforting warmth of the tea in her hands and that of the community enveloping her tired heart. The night had been a brutal reminder of life's fragility, but also of the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. Ayla understood that her fight had not just been for Lena, but for every soul in those yurts. The ancestral wisdom she carried was not just about hunting or survival. It was about the interconnectedness of everything, mutual responsibility, the invisible web of love and support that held them together against Yakutia's relentless cold. Later, with the sun higher, Ayla sat in front of her yurt, Lena playing quietly at her feet with a hide doll. The villagers continued their work, now with a lighter rhythm, renewed hope and common purpose. Ayla watched, scanning the icy horizon. The threat of the tigers had been real, but that of fear, of despair, was a constant internal battle she had also won. The greatest lesson was the true victory, not the absence of danger, but the unwavering presence of courage and love. She felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Boris, his wise, tired eyes meeting hers with deep respect. "You are the heart of our village." "Ayla," he said, his voice grave and full of admiration. "Your strength and your faith inspire us to continue, even when winter seems darkest and challenges insurmountable." Ayla merely smiled, a rare smile on her wrinkled face, but one that now radiated deep peace and serene acceptance. Life in Yakutia was an endless succession of challenges, but also of deep human connection and collective triumph. That day, beneath the pale sun, Ayla's village stood stronger than ever, forged in shared resilience and unconditional love. Ayla felt the warmth of Boris's hand on her shoulder, a touch that spoke of a respect she didn't seek, but accepted as part of her burden and her blessing. The peace she radiated was not the absence of pain, but the acceptance of it, the understanding that each overcome challenge forged the soul, not just hers, but that of all her people. Lena, still playing with the hide doll at her feet, was living proof that life, despite its brutality, always found a way to flourish. Ayla watched the villagers, now more organized, transforming tragedy into sustenance, the image of the slain tigers into hides that would warm and meat that would feed. It was the eternal dance of Yakutia, death and life intertwined beneath the relentless sky. That afternoon, the air in Ayla's yurt was imbued with the scent of dried herbs and wood smoke, a familiar and comforting aroma. Lena, already recovered from the nightmare, drew in the snow with a twig, her childish imagination oblivious to the gravity of the night's events. Ayla watched her, eyes half closed, her mind wandering through the memories of a long life full of battles. What she had done was extraordinary, yes, but it wasn't the first time she had defied the impossible. The difference now was the weight of the years, the certainty that each victory came with a greater cost to her tired body. Later, as the sun set, painting the horizon in shades of purple and orange, the villagers gathered for a communal meal. The respectful silence of the morning gave way to murmurs of conversation and subdued laughter. The tiger meat, prepared with simple seasonings, was a bittersweet reminder of what had happened. Ayla sat beside Boris, Lena nestled in her lap. Kyle and other women served, their faces more relaxed, but still with a gleam of admiration in their eyes as they looked at the elder. "Ayla," Boris began, his voice low, "what happened today will be told for generations. No one has ever seen anything like it." He paused, looking at the yurt's opening where the wind howled. "But winter is still long. How can we prepare for what's to come? What does the earth teach us with this?" Ayla looked at the flickering flame in the center of the yurt, her eyes reflecting the dancing light. "The earth teaches us that we are small, Boris, but together we are a mountain. The tigers came out of desperation, from the hunger that also afflicts us. Our victory was not just through strength, but through the wisdom of knowing that even the greatest predator has a weakness, need, and our strength is unity." She squeezed Lena's hand, who was sleeping peacefully. "The greatest defense is not axes, but the bonds that unite us, sharing, listening, caring for each other. That is what keeps the darkness away, be it from beasts or invisible fears." Her voice, though hoarse, carried the authority of centuries of history. The villagers listened, their heads bowed, absorbing every word. Ayla felt the weight of responsibility, the burden of being the guardian of memory and hope. The obstacle now was not an army of tigers, but the continuous challenge of maintaining faith, of nurturing resilience in every young heart, ensuring that the flame of life would not be extinguished with Yakutia's next icy breath. That night, before falling asleep, Ayla watched Lena, who now slept deeply, free from nightmares. The elder touched her granddaughter's soft face, feeling the fragility and the promise of a future. The greatest victory she knew was not the battle won, but the peace that nestled in the heart of her little ice flower. Ayla closed her eyes, weariness finally overcoming her, but in her spirit a new strength ignited. Yakutia would continue to test them, but the village, united and inspired by the courage of its elder, was ready to face any winter, any threat, with the certainty that love and human connection were the most powerful shield. Ayla's wisdom, more than ever, was the beacon that guided her people through the darkest nights. Ayla felt the weight of the beacon on her shoulders, a burden of weariness and exhaustion. The victorious night had left deep marks on the tundra and in her soul. Lena, in peaceful sleep, was the hope, the reminder of what they fought for. The elder knew that the day brought not only relief, but new responsibilities for the village's resilience. With the first ray of sun peeking through, Ayla rose, stiff muscles protesting. The smell of smoke and damp hides filled the air. The persistent cold bit her skin. Lena still slept, a soft smile on her lips. Ayla kissed her forehead, a silent promise. Outside, the wind howled, but the village was already stirring. Low voices and hurried footsteps indicating that life pulsed on. The villagers, faces pale with shock and admiration, began to gather. The battlefield beneath the aurora borealis was a silent testament to Ayla's courage. Boris, in a grave voice, organized the men for the grim but necessary task of collecting the tigers. White hides would be a shield against winter, the meat, vital sustenance. There was no celebration, only solemn acceptance of nature's providence. Kyle, the young mother, approached Ayla with a bowl of warm salamat. Her eyes, once full of fear, now shone with reverence. "Eat, Ayla," she whispered. "You are our strength." Ayla accepted the bowl, feeling the warmth in her wrinkled hands. That gesture, simple and selfless, was the essence of Yakutia, the human connection that kept them alive. As she ate, Ayla observed the village. The women, skilled hands, were already preparing the hides, each cut, each stitch, an act of gratitude and survival. Curious children were kept close to their mothers, their innocence protected by collective vigilance. Ayla felt the weight of her legend grow, a responsibility beyond her granddaughter. She was the link to the past, the guardian of the future. Later, sitting on a hide bench outside her yurt, with Lena playing at her feet, Ayla felt the pale sun warm her face. Boris sat beside her, eyes fixed on the horizon. "Ayla," he began, "what you did, it's a miracle, but winter doesn't wait. How can we ensure our strength doesn't wane?" Ayla took a deep breath, the icy air filling her lungs. "Strength doesn't wane, Boris, it transforms. The lesson of the tigers isn't just about battle, but about preparation. We must teach our young to read the earth's signs, to listen to the wind, to respect nature. Hunting is important, yes, but the hunt for wisdom is even more vital." She looked at Lena, then at Boris. "Our greatest defense is the mind, the heart, and unity. Overcoming is not an event, it's a way of life." Her eyes, deep and full of stories, fixed on the working villagers. Ayla understood that the true challenge was not just to survive the cold, but to keep the flame of hope alive from generation to generation. That day, though marked by struggle, was also one of renewal, of reaffirmation of the values that kept them standing. Ayla, the elder, the huntress, the guardian, was the rock upon which the village would build its future, facing each winter with the same courage and unwavering faith. The spirit of Yakutia, untamed and eternal, flowed through her. The spirit of Yakutia, untamed and eternal, flowed through her. The day etched itself into memory, a turning point for the village. Ayla, despite her exhaustion, felt a strange vitality, an echo of the ancestral strength that had propelled her. The Yakutian sun, which once seemed pale and distant, now radiated a light of hope, though the cold continued to bite. The villagers, moving with renewed purpose, had begun to skin the tigers, a grim but essential task. Each white hide, carefully removed, was a promise of warmth. Each piece of meat, a guarantee of sustenance. Ayla watched, sitting beside Lena, who now played with a small piece of hide, oblivious to the gravity of the providence surrounding her. Boris, his shoulders bowed by work and reflection, approached Ayla. His eyes, which had witnessed the elder's fury, now carried a mixture of admiration and concern. "Ayla," he began, his voice low so as not to disturb the child's peace. "Nature has given us much, more than we've ever seen. Our stores will barely hold it all, and the smell, it will travel." Ayla nodded, her eyes fixed on the horizon, where the icy mountains rose like silent guardians. She understood Boris's concern. Abundance at times was as great a challenge as scarcity. The tiger meat, though vital, was not their usual game. Its strong, unusual aroma could attract other predators, or worse, other clans, who would see the unexpected wealth as an invitation or an affront. Yakutia, in its vastness, was a place of unwritten rules, of delicate balances. "Wisdom isn't just about hunting, Boris," Ayla replied, her voice hoarse but firm. "It's about foreseeing what the wind will bring after the storm. This providence is a blessing, yes, but also a test of our unity and our intelligence." She paused, turning to face Boris, her eyes deep as frozen lakes. "We must act with caution and strategy. We cannot waste what has been given to us, but neither can we become prey to our own good fortune." News of the abundance spread quickly through the village. While relief was palpable, a new tension began to emerge. Some impetuous young men spoke of displaying the hides, of celebrating the victory with feasts that would attract attention. Others, older and more cautious, feared the consequences, the imbalance that such sudden wealth could bring. What was once an unwavering unity against a common enemy now faced the subtle erosion of divergent opinions and the temptation of ostentation. Kyle, the young mother, approached Ayla, her eyes filled with concern. "Elder, my husband, he speaks of taking some hides south to trade for tools we lack, but others say we should keep everything, that it's a sign of power." Ayla felt the weight of the decision. The turning point was not one more tiger, but the very soul of the village. How to maintain cohesion when prosperity, not adversity, threatened to divide them. How to use nature's gift without awakening greed or discord. She knew that the true battle would now be fought in the hearts and minds of her people, a struggle for justice in distribution, for altruism in sharing, and for overcoming human temptations. It was an invisible challenge, more treacherous than any horde of beasts. That night, beneath the ghostly light of the aurora borealis, Ayla gathered the elders. The campfire crackled in the center of the yurt, its flames dancing like ancient spirits. The air was heavy with expectation. "Yakutia has given us a gift and a burden," Ayla began, her voice resonating with the authority of her age and her recent feat. "Our strength lies in our unity. If we divide over this providence, we will be weaker than before. We must find a path that honors the gift and protects our future." She looked at each face, seeking the spark of understanding. The fight against the tigers had been a battle of muscle and courage. The one now presenting itself was a battle of spirit and wisdom, one that would demand an even deeper human connection from all of them. The challenge was great, but Ayla knew that true resilience was not just in surviving the cold, but in keeping the warmth of the community alive, even in the face of the most unexpected of providences. The village, which had united against terror, now needed to unite against its own fortune. Ayla felt the weight of her words in the silence that followed. The elders, faces marked by life on the tundra, reflected the complexity of the dilemma. Each brought with them the experience of harsh winters and the memory of times of plenty and scarcity. Boris, with a heavy sigh, broke the stillness. "Ayla, your wisdom is our light. But how can we satisfy hunger without attracting greed? How can we honor the gift without becoming prey to others?" His eyes swept over the other elders, seeking tacit support. An elder named Anya, whose nimble fingers had woven hides since her youth, spoke in a soft but firm voice. "The hides are warmth, Ayla. Our children shiver in the cold. But if we display them, other clans will come. And the meat, it won't last forever. We must think of the next winter and what will come after." She gestured towards the flames, as if seeing the uncertain future dancing within them. A young elder, Kaya, who had lost his family to famine many winters ago, had a glint of impatience in his eyes. "Ayla, life is short. We have food and warmth now. Shouldn't we celebrate, strengthen our young with abundance, show that we are strong, that Yakutia has blessed us with this victory? His voice was full of hope, but also a certain youthful imprudence. Isla listened to everyone, her eyes scanning each face, feeling the currents of fear, hope, and desire that permeated the yurt. She knew that true strength lay not in imposing her will, but in guiding consensus, in weaving the different voices into a single melody of common purpose. She raised her hand, a subtle gesture that brought silence again, deeper than before. Yakutia teaches us patience, she began, her voice hoarse but imbued with serene and unquestionable authority. And Yakutia teaches us sharing. This providence is not for one, nor for a few, but for all. The hides will not be displayed in ostentation, but used to warm every yurt, every child, every elder. They will be our silent protection against the cold. She paused, allowing her words to settle in each heart. The meat will be divided fairly, so that no one goes hungry, but we will not consume it thoughtlessly. A portion will be cured and stored for the winters to come, for the days of scarcity that we know will relentlessly return. And what remains, what cannot be stored, will be offered to the earth in gratitude and respect, so that it may bless us again in its own time. The elders listened, their expressions shifting from concern to a gradual and profound understanding. Ayla continued, her voice weaving a vision of a sustainable future. Our strength is not in showing what we have, but in how we use what has been given to us. We will teach our young to hunt with greater wisdom, to respect every life, to understand that true wealth is the community that remains united and supportive. She looked at Kaya with a gentle but firm gaze. Celebration will come, yes, but it will be a celebration of our unity, of our collective resilience, not of our material fortune. Boris nodded slowly, a faint, relieved smile appearing on his wrinkled lips. It is the wisdom of the ancients, Ayla, the one that has kept us alive through countless winters and challenges. Anya and the other elders also nodded, their eyes shining with new hope and renewed purpose. Ayla had charted a path, not of individual wealth, but of collective prosperity, of altruism that ensured the dignified survival of all. The decision was made there, beneath the flickering light of the campfire. The hides would be distributed equitably, prioritizing the most vulnerable and those most in need of warmth. The meat would be processed and stored with the utmost care, using all ancestral preservation techniques, and a portion would be offered in a ritual of gratitude to Mother Earth. The young would be instructed on the importance of discretion, solidarity, and responsibility towards the common good. Ayla felt a profound relief. The weight of imminent discord finally lifted from her tired shoulders. The village, once again, had chosen unity above all else. The true victory was not just the repulsion of the tigers, but the reaffirmation of the unbreakable bonds that kept them standing, strong and resilient, against any challenge that merciless Yakutia might throw at them. The campfire's flame flickered, reflecting the light of hope in the elders' eyes, promising a future of cohesion. The campfire's flame flickered, reflecting the light of hope in the elders' eyes, promising a future of cohesion. At dawn, the village awoke with a new purpose. Ayla, though weariness still weighed on her bones, felt the renewed energy of her people. The previous night's decisions began to take shape, transforming theory into action. Boris, with his grave and calm voice, organized the men for the task of processing the meat. It was not a common hunt, and the quantity demanded unprecedented collective effort. The women, led by Anya, were already dedicated to the hides, each movement of their experienced hands honoring the life that would give them warmth. Lena, oblivious to the complexity of the tasks, watched the movement of the yurt, her small, curious eyes following the comings and goings of the adults. Ayla sat at the entrance of her dwelling, observing the silent orchestra of work. Kyle, the young mother, approached with a shy smile, offering her a cup of herbal tea. "Elder, the young ones are listening to your words. My husband, he is already teaching the younger ones how to cure the meat, as you instructed." Her eyes shone with a mixture of admiration and relief. Ayla nodded, accepting the cup, the warmth of the tea warming her wrinkled hands. That was the true fruit of her struggle, not just physical survival, but the transmission of knowledge, the perpetuation of values. The distribution of the hides began. There were no murmurs of discontent, nor glances of greed. Each yurt received its share, the most vulnerable, the frailest elders, mothers with young children being the first to be attended to. Ayla observed each delivery, her eyes scrutinizing reactions, looking for any sign of discord. But she found only gratitude and a deep sense of justice. The unity, so hard won, seemed stronger than ever. The tiger meat, carefully cleaned and cut, was laid out for curing. The smell, once a concern, was now a reminder of providence and resilience. The young, once impetuous, worked with renewed seriousness, absorbing every teaching from the elders. Ayla saw in them the seed of the future, the promise that ancestral wisdom would not be lost. She remembered her own hunts, how every lesson from nature was etched into her soul. That afternoon, Boris sat beside Ayla again, his shoulders less tense. "You showed us the way, Ayla. True wealth is not in what is accumulated, but in what is shared, and true strength in unity." He looked at the village, where work continued at a steady pace. "Yakutia is relentless, but we are its reflection, untamed." Ayla smiled, a smile that reached her eyes, softening the deep wrinkles. "Yakutia gives us challenges so that we can discover the strength that resides in our hearts, Boris. And the greatest strength is the love we have for each other, the promise that no one will be left behind." She squeezed Lena's hand, who now slept peacefully in her lap. The peace she felt was not the absence of struggles, but the certainty that they had won the most treacherous battle of all, that of disunity. The village, forged in adversity and tempered by wisdom, was ready for whatever winter might still bring, with the flame of hope lit in every heart. The village, forged in adversity and tempered by wisdom, was ready for whatever winter might still bring, with the flame of hope lit in every heart. The days that followed the great providence of the albino tigers brought a calm that for Ayla was almost as deep as Yakutia's cold. The village, once a cluster of worries and fears, now shone with renewed purpose. The hides, soft and white as the snow itself, warmed the yurts, and the aroma of cured meat stored with such care promised sustenance for many winters. Lena, her granddaughter, played with contagious energy, her laughter filling the air and warming Ayla's wrinkled heart. The elder watched the little one, her eyes fixed on the innocence she had fought so bravely to protect, feeling a relief that mingled with her eternal vigilance. Boris, Kale, Anya, and Kaya, all of them, demonstrated a unity Ayla had rarely seen in her long life. Tasks were divided with altruism, and ancestral wisdom, once merely respected, was now actively sought and applied by the young. Ayla felt immense pride, a warmth that combated the eternal cold. The village had learned its lesson, not just to survive, but to prosper together. However, amidst this hard-won peace, a subtle shadow began to nestle in Ayla's heart. It wasn't a palpable fear, like a tiger's growl, nor the hunger she had once known. It was something more ethereal, a feeling that even with all the preparation and unity, there were forces beyond human control. She remembered Lena's crying that night, a sound that had chilled her more than any temperature, only to discover it was a nightmare. That moment had taught her that the greatest terror at times came not from outside, but from within, or from what the mind imagined. As days turned into weeks and winter tightened its icy embrace, Ayla spent more time observing the horizon, listening to the wind. The villagers, confident in their provisions and their unity, were more relaxed. But Ayla felt something different. The tundra's silence seemed denser, the star patterns slightly altered, and the behavior of some smaller animals more erratic. She couldn't pinpoint anything concrete, but her spirit, so connected to the earth, picked up a dissonance. One afternoon, while helping Anya sew a hide, Ayla paused, her wrinkled fingers still. Anya, noticing the elder's unusual stillness, looked up. "Ayla, does something trouble you?" Ayla sighed, the vapor of her breath dissipating in the cold air. "I don't know, my friend. It's like a whisper on the wind that only I hear. The village is strong, yes, but Yakutia is vast, and its secrets are many. What we cannot see, what we cannot touch. That is what worries me most." Anya nodded, her experienced eyes understanding the depth of Ayla's concern. The wisdom of the ancients taught that nature was never entirely at rest, and that peace was, often, just a brief interval between challenges. Ayla felt the weight of her age, the responsibility of being the guardian not only of lives, but also of premonitions. She knew that the true battle was not just against what presented itself, but against what lurked in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to emerge. It was a solitary burden, this keen perception, this intuition that drove her to search for invisible dangers. That night, beneath the dancing light of the aurora borealis, Ayla sat alone, watching Lena sleep deeply. Her small hand rested on her chest, a symbol of vulnerability and peace. Ayla knew that her greatest fear was not what she could face with her axe, but what might escape her vigilance, what the relentless winter might bring in a subtle and uncontrollable way. The village was united, but Ayla's heart still carried the incessant vigil of a guardian, a silent promise of protection against the unknown. Ayla's vigil, far from diminishing, intensified with each passing day. The tundra's silence, once a balm, now seemed laden with an invisible tension, a premonition that only her ears, trained by almost a century of life in Yakutia, could decipher. She spent hours sitting, observing the pale reflection of the sun on the snow, her eyes half closed, scanning the horizon, not for visible forms, but for nuances in the air, for vibrations in the ice that stretched beneath the village. The other villagers, immersed in the security of provisions and warm unity, barely noticed the subtle change. Kyle, with Lena nestled in her arms, smiled at Ayla, grateful for the peace. Boris and Anya, engrossed in organizing the meat and hide stores, saw in the elder only the silent guardian who had secured their future. But Ayla felt the ground beneath her feet in a different way. Small, almost imperceptible cracks began to appear on the surface of the ice, covering the nearby river. Not the usual cracks of intense cold, but an irregular, almost organic pattern, speaking of a deeper movement. The wind, at times, brought a strange sound, a distant moan that was neither animal nor storm, but something that seemed to come from the frozen earth itself. One morning, as the village prepared for another day of work, Ayla called Boris. "The ice," she said, her voice hoarse, pointing to the river. "It sings a different song today. I feel a tremor that isn't from winter." Boris frowned, his experienced eyes examining the white surface. "Elder, the ice is always treacherous, but it seems firm. Perhaps the cold is just more intense." He smiled. A reassuring smile, but one that didn't reach Ayla's eyes. She felt the frustration of not being understood, the weight of her solitary perception. That afternoon, Ayla approached Anya, who was weaving a blanket for Lena. "The smaller animals," Ayla murmured. "They don't appear anymore. The hares, the foxes, they're gone. It's as if the earth has swallowed them." Anya paused, her fingers stopping their movement. Yes, I noticed that, but perhaps it's the cold, Ayla. They hide better. Ayla shook her head slowly, her eyes filled with a deep sadness. It wasn't the cold. It was something more. Ayla knew that the true danger was not what could be fought with an axe, but what invisibly corroded the foundation of their existence. That night, the aurora borealis danced with an unusual glow, its vibrant colors seeming like a warning. Ayla stepped out of her yurt, feeling the heavy air, the ground subtly vibrating beneath her boots. She walked to the riverbank, where the cracks in the ice seemed to have deepened, forming dark veins on the white surface. She touched the ice with her wrinkled palm and felt a constant vibration, a faint but insistent pulse. It wasn't the cold that was more intense, it was the earth itself that was moving. Ayla raised her eyes to the sky, her lips moving in a silent prayer. Yakutia, their mother, and their tormentor, was about to present them with a new challenge, one that could not be faced with courage or brute force, but only with the wisdom of adapting to the uncontrollable. The ice of the great river, which had always been their road and their protection, now seemed like a broken mirror, reflecting a danger that the village, in its newly won peace, still could not see. Ayla felt a chill that did not come from the wind, but from the certainty that the climax of her vigil was just beginning. Ayla felt a chill that did not come from the wind, but from the certainty that the climax of her vigil was just beginning. The faint pulse in the ice, once a whisper, now became a stronger beat, a vibration that climbed her wrinkled legs and resonated in her bones. She turned sharply, her eyes fixed on the sleeping village, her heart beating with an urgency that defied her age. There was no time for hesitation. With the agility that experience granted her, Ayla ran back to the yurt, her steps firm on the snow. The ground beneath her feet seemed to tremble, a subtle but undeniable tremor. She entered Boris and Anya's yurt, her voice hoarse with urgency. "Wake up! The ice! The earth is moving!" Boris and Anya, roused from their sleep, looked at her with confusion, then with alarm upon seeing the grave expression on the elder's face. "Ayla, what?" Boris began, but was interrupted by a deep groan coming from the ground, a sound that made the yurt's hides vibrate. A small tremor shook the ground, knocking over a wooden bowl. Anya's eyes widened. "By Mother Earth." "There's no time for fear," Ayla said, her voice firm, cutting through the nascent panic. "We need to move the village, now, to the caves above the plateau. They are ancient, made of solid rock, and have been shelter in times of great earth disturbance." Boris, a man of reason and experience, looked at Ayla, then at the ground that still trembled softly. Trust in Ayla was absolute. "Call Kaya and the other elders," he instructed Anya, already rising. "We need to organize the evacuation." Within minutes, the village was awakened. Panic threatened to take hold, but Ayla's calm and authoritative voice, amplified by the elders, brought order. "Listen to me. The earth is restless. There is no danger of attack but of collapse. We need to go high to the safety of the ancestral caves. Take only the essentials: Lena, the children, the elders, and the warmest hides. The meat and the rest can wait." Kyle, with Lena nestled in her arms, looked at Ayla with eyes full of trust. Ayla touched her granddaughter's face, a gesture of love and promise. The unity they had forged against the tigers was now their greatest strength against the earth's wrath. The men, led by Boris and Kaya, began to guide the sleds, while the women helped the frailest. The tremor increased and the sound of distant cracks in the river ice became more audible. The journey was arduous. The wind howled and snow whipped their faces, but no one stopped. Ayla, walking with unwavering dignity, watched every step, every person. She felt the responsibility of every life on her shoulders, but also the strength that came from solidarity. Finally, beneath the ghostly light of the aurora borealis, they reached the plateau. The caves, dark and imposing, offered a safe refuge. As the last villager entered the cave, a stronger tremor shook the earth. A distant rumble echoed, and they heard the sound of ice breaking and rocks collapsing. Isla, standing at the cave's entrance, watched the village they had left behind. The river, once a solid surface, was now a tangle of broken ice blocks, and the area where their yurts had stood seemed to have sunk slightly. A collective sigh of relief filled the air. Lena, safe in Kale's arms, slept deeply, oblivious to the danger they had escaped. Boris and Anya approached Ayla, their faces marked by fear, but also by profound gratitude. "You saved us again, Elder," Boris whispered, his voice choked. Ayla looked into the darkness of the cave where her people huddled, safe. "Ancestral wisdom guides us, Boris. Yakutia teaches us to listen to the earth, to respect it, and to adapt. The true victory is life, unity, and the certainty that no one will be left behind." She felt peace settle in her heart. A peace won not by force, but by attentive listening, by intuition, and by unwavering faith in her people. They had resolved the conflict with nature, not by fighting it, but by moving with it. The village was safe, and the flame of hope once again burned strong. The village was safe, and the flame of hope burned strong. In the ancestral cave, the air was heavy with earth and warmth. Campfires cast dancing shadows, transforming the refuge into a sanctuary of life. Murmurs of relief mingled with the crying and whispers of mothers. Ayla, exhausted but serene, sat near the entrance, watching her people. Lena, nestled in Kyle's arms, slept, her childish face illuminated by the fire. Ayla caressed her granddaughter's hair. That small, precious life was the reason for her existence, for every battle and premonition. Fear, once constant, dissipated, giving way to gratitude. It was not the absence of danger that brought peace, but the certainty that together they would face everything. Boris and Anya approached, tired faces, eyes with a new light. "I never imagined the earth could be so alive," Boris said. "Your wisdom, Ayla, is our guide," Anya nodded. "You taught us to listen, to feel, not just the dangers, but the strength that unites us." Ayla looked at the faces of her people, at the children. She remembered the night of the tigers, the fury, and the illusory relief of Lena's crying, then the earth's restlessness, the invisible tremor that propelled her. Each challenge, real or imagined, had been a test and a lesson. Yakutia, in its relentless beauty, was not just a place of survival, but a teacher that forged the spirit, revealing resilience and compassion. That night, under ancestral protection, there was no longer fear of hunger, predators, or the earth. There was only the warm presence, the sharing of stories and laughter. The elders, including Care, shared legends. Reinforcing adaptation, the young listened with renewed respect, absorbing the essence of transmitted wisdom. Ayla closed her eyes, feeling the weight of almost a century of life, of struggles and victories. She had faced the impossible, not with superpowers, but with intuition, experience, and love for her family and people. The legend of Ayla, the huntress who faced 900 tigers and foresaw the earth's movement, was not just about her individual strength, but the inspiring collective strength. Dawn brought light to the cave. The air was icy, but the tremor had ceased. Ayla rose, bones creaking, spirit light. She looked at the village below, more distant, a reminder of the change. The river, with broken ice, seemed calmer. Nature and they had readjusted. "We will return home," Ayla announced, her voice strong and clear, "with new eyes, new hearts. Yakutia has taught us to value every moment, every person. True wealth is the life we share." The villagers began to move, with a renewed sense of purpose. Ayla picked Lena up in her arms, feeling the warmth of the small life. The greatest victory was not defeating enemies, but ensuring life, love, and wisdom. Ayla knew that Yakutia would always bring new challenges, but her people, united and wise, would be ready. The flame of hope, lit in every heart, would illuminate the path of future generations, a testament to human resilience. The return from the cave to the village, now visibly transformed, was an act of silent faith and unwavering determination. The pale morning sun revealed an altered but by no means desolate landscape. The river, once a smooth surface of ice, was now a mosaic of white blocks, some piled up, others floating in dark waters that reappeared in deep fissures. The yurts, though still standing, were misaligned, some with their wooden structures slightly tilted, a palpable testament to the recent earth tremor. There was no despair in the villagers' eyes, only a quiet, resilient acceptance of the new reality, and an unwavering readiness for the arduous work that awaited them. Ayla walked at the head of the group, Lena in her arms, feeling the comforting warmth of her granddaughter's small body against her wrinkled chest. The little one slept serenely, oblivious to the reconstruction that was beginning. Ashla looked at Boris, who was already organizing the men with a new authority to assess the damage and plan the necessary repairs. His gestures were firm and decisive. His voice, once at times hesitant, now carried the undeniable authority of a leader forged in the purest adversity. Anya, alongside Kale, carefully inspected the hides and supplies they had left behind in haste, efficiently seeking what could be saved and reorganized. There were no laments, only coordinated action and purpose. The village quickly became a hive of tireless activity. The women, with their skilled hands, began to straighten the yurt structures, mend torn hides, and reorganize the interiors with meticulous care. The men, with the strength of their arms and Kaya's practical wisdom, worked to stabilize the ground around the dwellings and create new safe passages over the fragmented river. Each resonant hammer blow, each meticulous stitch, was an act of reaffirmation, a vibrant echo of the promise that life would continue, stronger, more resilient, and more united than ever. Idla sat at the entrance of her yurt, her body tired but her spirit light, observing the majestic rebirth of her beloved village. Lena, now awake and full of energy, played with a small piece of soft hide, her crystalline laughter cheerfully punctuating the cold morning air. Ayla felt a deep and lasting peace, different from any she had ever known in her long existence. It was not the peace of the absence of challenges or dangers, but the unwavering peace of the certainty that her people had found the innate strength within themselves to face them with courage and unity. Yakutia, with its relentless beauty and its constant, unpredictable dangers, had become the great teacher, teaching them the complex dance of adaptation and the harmonious melody of unity. Boris approached, wiping sweat from his forehead with his thick glove, his eyes fixed on the elder. "Elder," he said, his voice choked with sincere gratitude. "What you foresaw, what made us move, saved everything, not just our lives, but our collective spirit." He knelt, a gesture of profound respect and reverence. "The village will never forget. You showed us that true strength is not just what is seen, but what is felt, what connects us to the earth and to each other in an unbreakable way." Ayla touched Boris's shoulder with affection, a soft, wise smile on her wrinkled lips. "The earth speaks to us, my son. We just need to learn to listen with our hearts, and the human heart, when united in purpose, is the most solid rock against any storm, no matter how fierce." She looked at Lena, who now ran towards her with the innocence of childhood, her little arms open for a hug. Ayla hugged her tightly, feeling the small life vibrate with energy and hope in her arms. That night, the campfires glowed in the darkness with renewed and welcoming intensity. The smell of roasted meat filled the icy air, and the villagers' voices mingled in ancestral songs and stories of triumph. Ayla, sitting in her place of honor near the fire, watched the scene with a serene gaze, her heart overflowing with emotion and pride for her people. The legend of Ayla, the intrepid huntress who faced the 900 albino tigers and foresaw the Earth's movement, was no longer just her personal story, but the collective story of her people, a living and inspiring testament to human resilience. She knew that Yakutia would continue to test them relentlessly with each harsh winter, with each unexpected change. But now they were unequivocally ready. The seed of hope, planted deeply in adversity, had blossomed into a lush forest of courage, unity, and unconditional love. Ayla closed her eyes, a final, contented smile on her lips. Her journey was complete, her legacy immortal, etched not in cold stones, but in the warm hearts of each one, illuminating the path of future generations with her light. Yakutia, in its icy and eternal majesty, had witnessed the greatest of victories, that of the untamed and eternally hopeful human spirit.